So you're welcome to this short webinar under the auspices of the Leadership Research Cluster and the webinar is titled Systematic Review. My name is Dayo Odukoya. Now, we've agreed in the cluster to start with systematic review. So it's very important that we all be on the same page about the concept of systematic review so that we can gain speed, because when clarity is in place, you are bound to gain speed. What exactly is systematic review? We are going to start, first of all, so with so like I was saying, the focus of this webinar is on systematic review, because we've agreed within the cluster, the Leadership Research Cluster of the College of Leadership and Development Studies, that we're going to be starting with systematic review design. And so what exactly is systematic review? First, we need to understand, before we go into it, this is my content. I'm going to go through intro, methodology, result presentation, and then conclusion. And so we want to start with the intro. And so what exactly is systematic review? It's simply a comprehensive and structured approach to synthesize. The key word there is synthesis. You are trying to synthesize. That is the divergence from normal literature review. From normal literature review, where you just take each paper article on its own and try to see how they are linked. But in this case, you want to synthesize the findings across board, across some themes. What is the consensus finding? How many are saying this? How many are saying that? That is a real focus of systematic review, and that's very important. It's like summarizing all the findings. So if you are reviewing about 50 articles, you begin to tell us the commonality. You synthesize all the findings across those 50 articles to give us the general consensus. That is what the power of systematic review is, summarizing existing evidence on specific research questions and hypotheses. That is one. It's also considered one of the highest level of evidence in the hierarchy of medical, social, and scientific researches. It's a very powerful tool, actually. Now, it is the procedure. The procedure involves, of course, well-defined steps to ensure transparency, rigor, and reliability. And of course, I want to quickly posit that order is a necessary prerequisite for progress and development. Order is a very, very necessary prerequisite. So where there's no order, there's no progress. Where there's no order, there are bound to be confusion and you're not likely to achieve development. This is my own take. And that is exactly what systematic review is trying to establish. There's a procedure and order we need to follow so that it can be comparable across board any part of the world, maybe people are reviewing that result. So with that intro, let's quickly now move on to the methodology. You know, what are the vital steps involved in when it comes to systematic review? What are the vital steps involved? Number one, you have to formulate the research question or objective. You clearly define your research questions or objectives that the systematic review aims to address. This should include specific criteria for the types of studies, the participants, the intervention types, comparison and the outcome of interest. So you select those articles based on those parameters. We call that PICO-T. That's the acronym for all those keywords or expressions or phrases I've just listed now. So that will be the criteria for selecting those articles, because they need whatever is the research focus on all those articles should have the commonality, because eventually you want to now do a frequency count of the outcome of those researches or studies or questions. That is very important. So you formulate clearly your research questions and objectives. Next to that is the protocol development. Develop a detailed protocol outlining the review methodology. The protocol should include your search strategy. What search engines are you going to into? What database are you going to utilize? What is the reason for your selection of that database? I will give you some samples as we proceed, examples as we proceed. So, and then what are your inclusion and exclusion criteria? And the data extraction methods you want to adopt. And the assessment of the quality. How do you assess the quality of the study? because it's not any kind of study you just include in your studies. They have to be qualitative. The method must be, must be scientific indeed. And then what is your plan for data synthesis? You see, we kept on emphasizing this word synthesis. It's the cornerstone of systematic review. It's about synthesis. And so we should not lose sight of that as we proceed, the synthesis. Then number three step in systematic review is the search strategy. Conduct a comprehensive systematic literature search across multiple electronic databases such as PubMed, Scopus, Web of Science, Sage, and others. For us in this institution, Scopus is so germane to us. So I would suggest strongly that we should focus on Scopus. Even if it's Web of Science, it will still reflect in Scopus. If it's Sage, it should also reflect in Scopus. So Scopus seems to be the ground where all these articles are synthesized, are all deposited. So identify all the relevant studies. The search should use predefined keywords and control vocabulary to ensure completeness. You don't just use one single keyword. You use it in various angles to make sure you capture as all articles are. Because if you just use one single keyword, it will narrow down your search and you may miss out some very useful articles relating to that topic. And that is why it is very important that you also use predefined keywords and control vocabularies to ensure completeness. That's very important. Then study selection itself. Now, screen the retrieved articles based on predefined inclusion and criteria. You should state your criteria from the onset. It should be English, for instance. I will give you one example. Some examples here. The process typically involves multiple reviewers working independently to assess each study relevance, and then discrepancies are resolved through discussion on third-party arbitrator. That is the procedure. So you see here on this slide a typical inclusion criteria for a particular study that I did on emotional intelligence. And the first search gave me a limit. It gave me about 43 on that because it's not a common study actually, because it's actually focusing on a particular type of study. So I got 43 from there. Because I'm interested in, I can't pay, I'm not ready to start making payment to purchase those articles. So one of my selection criteria was open access also, because that way I don't need to pay for those articles, because I need a full article. I can't just use abstract to be able to get the information I'm looking for. And so I had to limit myself to open access. Then I have to limit myself also to English language, because that's language I understand. And that narrowed it down to 39. After applying open access, it came down to 39. After applying the parameter of English language, it came down to 10, and then from there, after applying, the parameter of those that are focused on the theme of my study, it came down to 8, and that was what I did in this particular study. Of course, in most systematic studies, it require a larger number of articles than what is seen here. So I want to suggest that we should not go for anything less than at least between 20, at least minimum between 10 to 20 or 30 articles, depending on your capacity. But if the more, the better, because when it comes to submission, those journals, especially if they are high top journals, they will always insist on high number of articles to be reviewed. If your number of articles reviewed, is low, that may be a condition for rejecting at times. And so we need to put this into consideration when we are trying to review those articles. It should not take us too long. In fact, when we are working, and so that is where the work for systematic review is, because your data is collected from those articles. So let's go for as much as possible. If you can even get up to between 30 and 50, the better, depending on your capacity anyway. So those are part of the things that we need to work on. And then data extraction. Extract relevant data from selected studies using standardized data extraction form. And I'm going to share one of the extraction forms with us. This form captures information such as study characteristics, participants, demographics, intervention details, outcomes measured, and the results. This will constitute the themes for the article. Let me quickly share with you. This is one example of extraction. We normally use Excel spreadsheet, and you can see you have your serial number. Each row there is representing an article. Number 1 is one article, number 2 is another article. So all the information you need from the article, you extract them and then capture them here. We put this extraction form as appendix to our report. People want to see it. It is useful to them. They want to see all the information you have extracted from those various articles you are conducting systematic review on. And so you put the name of the author, you put the title, you put the source of the article, then they put the research questions, as it were, and so on and so forth. And then the various things you are interested in, based on your research question, you begin to extract those information according to those themes. And then the finding, the statistics, the kind of method they use for their statistics, to analyze the data, and so on and so forth, and the findings, you put them methodically inside it. You capture everything inside each article. So you don't need to start going back to that article again. And it's from this table, from this form, then the data, you generate the statistics. Yes, there are statistics. We are going to use frequency count and percentages on the frequency of occurrence of a particular finding, across per team. And that is what is going to constitute our table of results, that is where the quantitative aspect comes in. Though this kind of study is actually majorly qualitative, but you can also combine it with, you can make it you can make it actually mixed method by also transporting or translating that result into, using the quantitative approach to generate the result from the qualitative findings. It's possible to do that, and that's the approach I actually want us to adopt as we proceed. So, and then I'm coming back to this again. Then next, you now move on to data and synthesis. How do you synthesize? So you can see that extraction form is giving information on each article. So you have to now synthesize the information across your teams. When I was saying that how many are able to come up with this kind of finding or that is the synthesis method. You are synthesizing the findings across the various articles. If you have 20 or 30 articles, how many of them are agreeing with that hypothesis or are rejecting the hypothesis, and so on and so forth. If you are using hypothesis, that is actually the synthesis. What is the consensus finding? That is the beauty of systematic review. Some use meta-analysis, which is a more comprehensive statistical method called Cohen-D and Co. to determine the effect size across those studies. We are not going to use that approach here. It's not necessary because our work is majorly social sciences, and then we don't really need that. So we are going to use the narrative approach and then just combine with using that simple statistics to synthesize our information. That's going to be our own strategy here. So we don't need to go into meta-analysis. It's too technical and then it's not even necessary, especially for this field, our own field here. It's not really necessary. Okay, having said that, the next thing is to now talk about how do you interpret your results and reach a conclusion. Again, it's based on that result. Once you get the frequency and the percentage, and then you create a chart, it's very easy for you to be able to reach a conclusion to determine the consensus finding. And if there's no consensus, maybe it's almost a tie, you also discuss it, why it is so. And then if there's need, in fact, the beauty of this is that you're also going to see the gaps and then you are going to give recommendation for further research at the end of the day. So that is out. So you just discuss whatever is the consensus finding you are generating from the synthesis. You discuss, you give interpretation, and then you give your discussion, and then you reach your conclusion. And then how do you now publish that? For format there's a format that is actually always required for systematic review when you want to report. They call it the Prisma format, and the acronym for Prisma, I'm going to discuss Prisma very soon. So you prepare a comprehensive systematic review report that adheres to established reporting guideline for systematic review called Prisma. The review is typically published in peer-reviewed journals and can inform policy decisions and future researches. So before talking about that research, this is the format of our result. I'm expecting synthesis. Whatever synthesis across board you have made, I expect you to be able to convert it to a frequency count and then percentage. And then you can also turn that either the frequency count or percentage into a chart. This one should be easy for everyone to do. It's not anything complex at all. So, and it will be focusing on the various themes. Each team should have this kind of table of results and charts supporting it to show us the consensus finding on the various themes you are coming up with in your sentences. I hope that is clear enough. Okay, and so what is this Prisma, your reporting format? Before I go into that, I love this quote by Isaac Newton. He says, if I've seen further, it is by standing on the shoulder of giants. That is exactly what systematic review is all about. And I want to quickly proceed at this point that please, when you are selecting those articles, select articles by from top-rated journals and by acclaimed authors. So by that way, you'll be writing on the shoulder of those giants. Those authors that are claimed, they are likely to attract greater citation. And when you are now synthesizing their work, it will increase the probability of increasing the citation for your own work also. So don't just select any kind of article. No, make sure you select top-rated articles by top-rated authors. That way you'll be riding on the shoulder of giants and your work will become more credible. So what exactly is PRISMA? PRISMA stands for Preferred Reporting Items for Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis. That's the meaning of PRISMA. It's an acronym. It is an evidence-based guideline for reporting systematic reviews and meta-analysis in various fields of research, including healthcare, social sciences, and other disciplines. It's developed to improve the transparency, completeness, and the quality of reporting in systematic reviews. It makes it easier for readers to assess the validity and reliability of the findings. So I want to quickly recommend that we follow the PRISMA format when we are working on our work. Having said this, let me just quickly jump straight into the PRISMA. It includes flow diagrams that usually depict the process of the study. The diagram outlines the number of studies identified, screened, included, and excluded at each stage, just I've discussed with you before, and then, so these are the various components of PRISMA. It's just like what we are used to, but in the content is what differs a little bit. We have the title and the abstract, which clearly indicate that the paper is a systematic review or meta-analysis, and the abstract should summarize the research questions, the method, the main results, and the conclusion, as it were. And then under the introduction, you state the research question, the rationale for the review, and the objectives, and provide a brief overview. So when you are preparing your report, follow this guideline. Provide a brief overview of the existing literature. That is, you do a kind of mini literature review the way you have been doing it before we now go into the proper systematic review itself. It's different altogether, they're not the same. So you do a preview. I'm already working on my own paper anyway, and I'm sure if I go very far to some extent, I will share them with us. I'm not saying it's perfect, we're all learning together, but at least we can use it to guide. The test run or proof that we have learned is by the time we submit it to journals that it will have quick acceptance. That will be the proof that we have properly learned. But there's nothing wrong about it. We may try it 1 or 2 times until we get it right. It's a journey, and learning is a progressive thing. So we must not be discouraged as we continue to proceed in this direction. But this is one of the designs that's actually beautiful for us in the social sciences too. Then the method. So in the method in PRISMA is different to the method we normally use in our various survey study. Our various survey study method is usually very scanty. But in this case, this is where you are now going to begin to report all the things you have put in your Excel sheet as extraction. In the extraction form, you now begin to give us the details of how did you conduct your selection criteria, what is the outcome of that result, and then the information you get, the synthesized information you got from each of the articles. This is where we are going to now begin to report them before you now give the sentences. That is where you're going to, so it includes, it should detail the research strategy, the study selection process, the data extraction method, the quality. How do you assess the quality assessment procedure? Author should you should also explain how potential biases and heterogeneity were addressed in the issue, in your work, before you now come up with your result. That is actually the difference here. So the result now, under the result, you present the main findings of the review, including the characteristics of included studies, the sentences of the result which you have gotten from which you should have converted into frequency chart table and percentages, and then charts. That is a whole. We are not using meta-analysis like I said before, and then exploration of heterogeneity, and then summarize the evidence and highlight key outcomes. And then use frequency, this statement, I just added this, use frequency tables, percentages, and charts to synthesize findings per team or per research question. That is the report, that one will be reported here. So And then you now discuss your finding, interpret the finding in the context of the research questions and existing evidence across those various articles you have synthesized. Discuss the limitations you have observed, potential biases and implications for practice and further research. Then you reach your conclusion. It's a very simple one. The only major work is reading those articles, extracting the information and synthesizing them into themes and then turning them. It's not too difficult, actually. It's just the number of articles you need to review that creates for the work. And it's not anything too difficult because the articles are not lengthy, maybe at most, some of them 10 pages, 5 pages, 10 pages. So we can run through them within a short time. So that's why I want us to go for as much volume as possible. And that's why the kind of topic you have selected, if it's a trending issue, you should get more articles of them. It's only when the issue is not trending, we have paucity of articles. So the more the articles, the greater the chances of acceptance. And then if you're able to synthesize correctly, the greater the chances of acceptance for publication. So those are the things, issues. So these are some references. They're very useful. You can, to get more information about systematic review, I advise that you consult these references. They will give you more information and enlightenment on the subject of systematic review. So that is it. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you, and God bless you. So if you have more questions or clarifications, you can give me a shout either through WhatsApp or you get across to me. God bless you. My email, of course, is not express, it's just Odukoya@gmail.com. That is, I'm only saying it's not for my colleagues there, but in case this recording is posted on YouTube, you can get across to me on Odukoya@gmail.com, DAYOODUKOYA. God bless you and have a wonderful day. See you at the top.